Hello, this is Thor Young with Bear Bull Traders, and I'd like to share my INTC trade recap with you today. INTC wasn't on any of our lists today. Actually, the day was pretty slow on the most part, and I didn't see anything out of our gappers list from the morning that I was into. I also didn't sit down till afternoon today because I had some errands to run, and was really just taking a look to see what was going on, see if I could find anything to trade. As I was looking through, one thing that kind of came out to my attention was it seemed like the semiconductors in general were moving independent of the SPY in the market. So I thought that I would go ahead and scan through the semiconductors and see if I could spot any of my favorite setups so that I might be able to get myself into a position. So as I came across INTC here, I noticed something quite interesting for me, which was that INTC was moving up quite nicely on the daily and had made some good progress, but had broken through and then rejected underneath the 50 moving average on its daily chart. When it did that, when I noticed that, I looked over here to see exactly what was going on, and I noticed on the 1-minute chart here we actually had one of my favorite setups, which was a descending wedge starting to form. Now, I've talked with some people they talk about triangles and wedges and what we consider to be the difference. I'll give you my definition of it, which may be a little different than others. A wedge for me could be a triangle, but specifically a wedge for me is when you have a flat base that is being pushed against by the price action, whether that be the moving averages or descending highs or something is pushing against a flat area. That's what I call a wedge. So a wedge isn't necessarily always a triangle, and this is a perfect example of that. So you saw INTC had rejected off of this level here and came back through 48.35, which is where the 50 was sitting. So 48.35 right up in here. So it pushed back above that. It actually came below it earlier and then went back above it again and then started to come back down. So I saw, as you can see here, we have touches to the base of my wedge at 48.39, 1, 2, 3, and then when it came down and touched it again. Now the important part is the touch needs to be to the penny. If it's not to the penny, especially on a slow moving stock like INTC, if it's not to the penny, it doesn't really have the momentum we're looking for, quite the weight. So you see 1, 2, and then you see eventually it comes back to the penny. So when it pulls back up again, I go ahead and take my entry. Now it's a pretty easy entry to take because even at 48.40, my stop out would only be the break of these averages. I was probably thinking if it broke this flat top here, so 48.45. So at most I had a 5-cent range, but most likely if it would have ticked up and got up and started settling up here, I would have gotten out a little earlier. So I'd say we're only running 3 to 5 cent risk. And because of that, I loaded up on a lot of shares, went pretty heavy, 1,500 to I think it was 1,500 shares total. So I went in here, went short at 1,500 shares here at the with the hope for the break of this wedge, and as you can see, we broke through the wedge. I didn't quite get the move I wanted. I was hoping to get down to 48.35, so I at least got a solid 5 cents out of that move before I took a partial. So I just waited. It came up here, tested my base again, and then pulled right off of it. Threw a limit order out at 35, got my fill. And then I started taking 5-cent partials pretty much all the way down. Now, there was a few people in the chat that were kind of, I held on a little bit longer. A couple people were getting out, and they, I was told actually in the chat that I explained why I stayed in. Originally, I was thinking that INTC could have actually been wedging eventually to go back up, and it still may actually. The price is going up right now. But in this moment, it looked weak. And then, so as you can see here, I was really thinking about scalping and taking out a bunch of my position here. But I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because we formed a new wedge here on the 1 minute. And that wedge was against 48.31. Now, what also is interesting is that these wedges are also starting to coincide with 5-minute levels now as well. We broke down to 31 before. Now we're back touching it again to the penny. So I'm seeing this strength and this downward movement here. You've got lower highs and then you've got these to the penny touches, which is what I like. So I decided to hang on and stay in. Sure enough, got another good breakdown and was able to ride this one all the way down to where I eventually took my final out at VWAP. I was just out of shares at that point, so I might have hung on a little bit lower. But if you look back on this on the 5-minute chart, you can see here that INTC is a big friend of VWAP, and most people who trade INTC regularly know INTC likes VWAP. So once I saw a lack of momentum really to push any further, even though you saw this little wedge here, which got everyone a nice little pop down here, I went ahead and got got the rest of it out at 48.21. That was my target from the beginning. I was hoping for a break of VWAP. Never actually intended on INTC going as low as it did, but the strength of the wedge, if you will, prevailed. Also, you could consider that to be a double top instead. So there was a lot going for this trade. Just wanted to show everybody that, part of being successful in this is taking your time and waiting for your setup. Everyone has one they like. I trade almost exclusively wedges now. I think they're, especially, as I keep saying, to the penny, I think it's a very solid indicator of which direction it's going to go, which is the direction of the base. So if you've got your flat to the penny here, you're expecting to go down. If you saw this reversed and start hitting flat to the penny marks on the upside, then you would start thinking, uh-oh, this has a lot of up pressure, might want to get out. So again, nice little trade on INTC, took big shares, so even though she was a slow mover and only managed to squeeze 20 cents out of her, so you can imagine with 1,500 shares and some partialing, still an easy way to win a few $100 out of the day. So I hope everyone is having a great day. I hope you all managed to stay green even though we didn't have a lot of movement today. And hope to see everyone on tomorrow. Have a great day.